Hello everyone, it's Lel and it's time to talk about episode 42 from Tropical-Rouge Precure. This episode, I'm going to divide this episode in two parts. And if we're talking about the first part of the episode, this was one of my favorite Tropical-Rouge episodes. I cried and I got super emotional, and I'm going to explain why. And the second half was not as good. Visually and storytelling wise, it was weird as well. But I feel like storytelling, it was still good, but visually it was not. But the first half was perfect in every single aspect. Like every single aspect of the first half of this episode was brilliant. So one of the peculiar things about Tropical-Rouge is the Tropical Club. The Tropical Club is basically a character of its own. And I believe that the Tropical Club is probably the most developed character. Since we like talking about character development so much in Precure, I feel like the Tropical Club is the most developed character in Precure. And we saw so much of it in this episode that I loved it, tied with each of the characters' stories and storylines and what they're doing with their lives and personalities and such. Chef's kiss. So one of the things that I really loved was that the Tropical Club has gone through a lot during the season, and in this episode we could see that. We could see the other clubs that the Tropical Club has interacted with. So we had an episode with the art club with the sand thing, we had an episode with the broadcasting club, we had an episode with the astronomy girl, and she now has her own club, and we could see all of that. So that was very heartwarming. So I already started tearing up a little bit because of that. And then we could see the girls working together and how Minori was having a hard time. And so she started sharing her story, the story of the play that we've seen a little bit in the last episode. And now we could see a clearer picture of it, and I loved the visual representation. I loved those shadowed characters. They remind me a lot of Utena. I love Utena, so I really loved seeing that reference. I don't know if that's a reference, but it reminds me of Utena. And we could see that, and we could also see a little bit more of the story, because there's going to be a part in the story that the characters are going to get together and they are going to plead eternal friendship. We're going to be friends forever. And at this moment, they decide that Laura's going to sing her song, so very emotional part of it. And then we see the girls rehearsing, and in the rehearsal, there is a scene in which Laura's having a hard time delivering, because it's the scene that she is talking about the fact that she's going to leave, and then she needs to plead this eternal friendship, friends forever. And she's having a hard time doing that. And this is going to play a little later, but before, let me talk about that Asuka and Udo scene. So we see that Udo is a very stern girl. Oh, and I forgot to mention the new student council, because the student council from Tropical-Rouge from the Aozora school, has been a rival, kind of, to the Tropical Club, and we see how stern they are in this episode as well. But it's very funny that Minato and Laura don't even care. You're late. You're not late, girl. And then, everything goes as planned. So it's nice seeing that reference as well, because the student council has always been this one to pick on the Tropical Club, because for them to abide by the rules, very strict, very stern. And we see Yuriko, the contrast, and what Yuriko feels about the Tropical Club now. That scene was so beautiful and so poetic, and the way it was done, it showed so many things. First, it showed that Asuka was able to enter Phoenix Academy, Phoenix Gakuen. Her scores, her grades in the tests were great enough for her to enter that, so they're going to be together. Asuka and Yuriko are going to enroll in the same school, and they're going to play tennis together for sure. And then there's going to be a tennis celebration, and we could see how Yuriko has changed her views on the Tropical Club. I think she doesn't say it clearly, but she says how much the Tropical Club has changed things. And one of those things that the Tropical Club has changed is Asuka herself. If it weren't for the Tropical Club, Asuka would never have a chance. probably wouldn't have a chance to get things right with Yuriko again. So the Tropical Club has a very strong implication in Asuka's personal story, in every girl's personal stories. Their stories would never go forward without the Tropical Club. And so we see how Yuriko is moved and changed by it. And I feel that it was so beautiful when Asuka said, this is tropicalizing. This is the tropicateru that Manatsu talks about so much. It's so important to acknowledge Manatsu's influence in the whole season. Manatsu doesn't have a big storyline like the other 4 characters, but Manatsu is the one who sets the tone from Tropical-Rouge. Tropical-Rouge as a whole is, in essence, a season that has Manatsu's soul. And the fact that they're doing what's most important right now, which is Manatsu's motto, and the words that Manatsu lives by, just proves that Manatsu is the one that is setting the tone of the story of Tropical-Rouge. So it's very nice when the characters and the writing of the story acknowledge that. So love it. Loved that scene. It was so beautiful. And the way Yuriko talked about tropicalizing, I loved that so much. Oh my god. And then we see a scene of the 5 girls eating together. And in that scene, Laura starts talking about how much the friendship she had with the girls has changed her. And at that moment, I was like, girl, please no. And I started crying, I started tearing up. But they shifted the tone of the scene very fast, because that is not supposed to be talked about right now. And we know that. And the girls change and the girls shift the tone of the conversation by mentioning the scene that Laura was having trouble with. So like, you have to say the scene with this tone. And Manatsu is the only one who is not able to feel the moment very well, because she knows the implications of what Laura was saying. Saying that, I loved meeting you and being your friends, this changed my life, is kind of a prelude to a goodbye. So Manatsu felt that. And that scene was so beautiful, with the girls smiling and we could see a close-up of each of their faces. It's like full circle. Coming from the start of the season, those girls didn't know each other, coming to a point that they all rely on each other very much and they all believe in each other. They all support each other. They're very good friends. Love it. I love it. And then we go to the saddest scene of the episode, which is when Laura and Manatsu are talking in Manatsu's house, and then they start talking about their inevitable goodbye. And the tone of the start at the start of the conversation is very light. Laura saying that when she is the Queen of Grand Ocean, she's going to visit the girls, and the girls are going to visit her, and everything will be fine. But they know that's not the case, because there is the mermaid law. Those words cannot cross. Those words cannot get together. And so, at that moment, a tenseness starts. And I have been saying a lot that Laura is probably the one who's going to go to the mermaid world and is going to change the law. And Laura even says this, like, if I become queen, I'm going to change that law. That law is not going to be real anymore. But she says it in such a lighthearted manner that I don't think that it's going to be the case anymore. I don't think it's going to be that simple. And then Laura turns around and she says to herself, even if I don't change the law, I will. And she doesn't conclude her thoughts and her phrase. So I wonder what she's thinking. And this is making me very, very tense. I think Tropical-Rouge is going to have a bittersweet ending. And the way the scene was played with like Laura in the light of the moon and Manatsu sitting in the dark, so beautiful. And the camera work at that scene, girl, loved every second of it. And so we get to the other day, which is a Sunday, and the girls go to school, and then when they're there, Ayaraneda attacks. And they defeat the Ayaraneda very fast, and that was not the real Ayaraneda. The real Ayaraneda was a big shark. And that's weird. Like, this second half of the episode was very weird to me, because the first half was so beautiful. It was so well drawn. And then the second half was really weird. Like, it was not well drawn at all. The animation was kind of wonky. And I wonder why they decided to focus more on the civilian part, to leave the cure part to like weaker animation. I feel like the emotion, the raw emotion of the episode was more on the human side of everything, the civilian side, and the cure portion not so much. What carried this part for me was the soundtrack, because when the big Yaraneda arrived, it started sucking the energy of everybody in the city, and the girls went after it. And when they went after it, Butler said something very nice. Finally, like, we're finally seeing bits and pieces of the story, and I love it. Butler said that he met the queen, and the queen tried to destroy everything prior to this, but then the legendary cure stopped her and she couldn't win against her. So at that point she was called the Witch of Destruction, and now those cures are trying to stop her as well. But it's not the witch who is attacking, it's Butler. And Butler mentioned something very interesting, which is Butler met the queen at that time. He was a young man at that time, and we could see him, we could kind of see Butler, even though he was on his back and we couldn't see him clearly, but he felt like a warrior to me. And in that moment, Butler says that the queen at that time gleamed a lot. She was very beautiful. So I feel like Butler is in love with the witch in a way. The witch. He's in love with the witch in a way, and she was not called the Witch of Delays. This is interesting as well. She was called the Witch of Destruction, and the cure stopped her, and Butler started saving her, serving her at that moment, from what he said. And it was also very nice that Butler decided to attack the Aquapot so that Laura could not retrieve the motivation anymore. Butler is a relentless villain. I really like him. And the interactions we had with him and the witch in this episode were magnificent. I loved them so much. And so, like, the girls tried, like, the fight was super weird because they didn't try to do anything. Like, Manatsu just jumped, and the big whale just engulfed her and engulfed the others too, but it took the others out and left Manatsu only inside of it, and then went back to God knows where. And like, as I said, what I feel like carried this moment was the soundtrack. The soundtrack was incredible. There were like heavy stakes in this moment, and the soundtrack really carried it, but the animation unfortunately felt super weak. That is kind of sad. But so we could see like the inside of the whale was very well done, very artistic. And at the end of the episode, we see Manatsu meeting with the legendary cure. So beautiful. She is so beautiful. I love her. So Manatsu isn't by herself. It's another situation in which the girls are going to go after Manatsu. And the only time that Manatsu had to be saved was in episode 10, but she was able to retrieve her motivation somehow. In episode 29, she was also a key point for the power-up, even though she had to be kind of saved too. Like, she didn't really have to be saved because she was able to get that power because of the legendary cure. And now the girls are going to go after her in the next episode, but Manatsu is there with the legendary cure too. So we're getting ready for the big moment. I feel like it's time for the legendary cure to tell her story as well. I feel like we might see the start of it in the next episode. So this was a very strong moment. I love it. Tropical-Rouge is really winning my heart week after week after week. Brilliant episode. What did you think of episode 42 from Tropical-Rouge? Unfortunately, next week we don't have an episode, but then 2 weeks from now, 43 is going to be here, and I'm super excited. I'm dying to watch it because it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Anyways, guys, that's my opinion, and I want to take this little time to thank the members of the Magical Cinnamon channel. If you are a member, thank you very much for your support and for believing in Magical Cinnamon. And if you've watched up until now, thank you so much as well. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye bye!